Hodges. Welcome to Chattanooga Self Improvement Meetup, a mastermind group where we listen, learn, ask questions, and comment in an effort to help make each other the best version of ourselves, thus helping to make the world a better place in which to live.
Here we go. Hello, I am Corey Green, not Glenn Hodges, and this is Self Improvement Meetup Group, and we are here with Laurie Cordoza Moore. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
You did. Thank you,
Great,
Corey.
and she's wonderful. Well, she's going to talk to us about a very timely and important subject, so we're excited to have you here. Thank you for coming, and we can't wait to hear your message.
Corey, thank you so much for having me. Glenn, I appreciate you providing this opportunity. This is an important topic that needs to be discussed in lieu of what's going on in our country right now, not just with the elections, but also with the chaos that we've seen erupting in cities across this nation. We have said for almost a decade now, when we first found the first textbook that had propaganda, false disinformation in the textbooks, we said that if we do not change the direction and get rid of this curriculum, we are going to lose our constitutional republic, that our children will turn their back on this country. And over the last year, we have witnessed exactly that, because our children are not properly educated within our public school system, excuse me, or within our public school system, as Corey and I were speaking before we started the program, that this is a problem across the board within private, Christian, religious, parochial, and public school systems, because a lot of these private schools use what the public schools are using because it's cheaper for them to purchase when they're using what the public school system is using. So very few schools will go out and do something different. We see charter schools like the Barney schools that came out of Hillsdale, which are some of the top charter schools in the country, if not the top. So they're doing a great work, but we need to extend that curriculum to our children in the public school system, because they are going to be the majority within our country. And so I want to just also start by just kind of giving a little introduction to myself and to the organization, so that our audience understands where we are coming from and why we have taken on this issue. But I am the president of a nonprofit organization proclaiming justice to the nations. And our mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with Israel and the Jewish people against the rise of global anti-Semitism. And we accomplish that goal by producing award-winning documentary films and television programs, all types of media, to educate Christians globally. So every year we're able to reach hundreds of millions of Christians, which has enabled our organization to actually grow in other countries. We have chapters not only throughout the United States of America and supporters, but we also have chapters in Australia, South Africa. We have a chapter in Tanzania, Sierra Leone, and Ghana as well. So the message, as it goes global, more and more Christians respond. And really, that was the vision, that if we could just get this message out from a biblical perspective, that it wouldn't matter where Christians are around the world. We are called in the Bible to bless our Jewish brethren. Genesis 12:3, God said, I will bless those who bless you, Abram, and I will curse him who curses you. And if you were to read that scripture in the Hebrew translation to English, it would say, I will bless those who bless you, and he who ignores you, I will utterly destroy. And so as believers, as Christians, this is so critically important to our faith, to our walk, our relationship with God, because one thing we don't want to be is on the wrong side of what God believes. And unfortunately, because of anti-Semitism throughout Christian history for 2,000 years, because the fathers of the faith, when they became more Gentilized, instead of hanging on to that Hebraic foundation, we have lost that important role that we play in this whole plan. And I have people all the time who ask me, about where the United States is in the end times. And I always explain to them, I said, look at the word Jerusalem written in English, USA. Those 3 letters are right in the heart of that word. So we are exactly where we need to be. And with President Trump moving our embassy to Jerusalem, we literally put our stake in the ground. We are literally in the heart of Jerusalem. So that's exciting. But getting back to the organization, I also serve as a special envoy at the United Nations for the World Council of Independent Christian Churches. My focus at the UN is human rights abuses, specifically as it pertains to anti-Semitism, which we have a lot of anti-Semitism in and throughout the United Nations. So again, our work, no matter where Christians are, our message is to them to take a stand. So we have been producing programming, and the audience, if you are interested in learning more and becoming more informed from a biblical perspective, you can go to our website. We have all of our media, our programs. We have a Focus on Israel show there that you can watch. We've got a lot of great topics that we cover. We've got documentary films there. We've got short media, video messages that you can share with your audience as well. Unfortunately, we have had to move our platform, our media, to our website at pjtn.org because we are also, as I'm sure many of you have heard, are being censored because the content doesn't fit the viewpoint of the different social media outlets. So some of our programs have actually been banned or blocked from YouTube. So we've moved everything to the website. So again, that's where you're going to get the bulk of the information. And if you're interested in staying informed, I'm glad that Glenda is with us because Glenda's been a longtime supporter of the work that we've done, Glenda White, here at PJTN, and we're grateful to have her participation in what she's doing here in the state of Florida, because it has created to the great success that we've seen in this state. But all that to say is as we educate, we also activate our supporters. And that's why we have to be educated. You have to be educated and informed in order to know how to take these issues on. So back about a decade ago, and this pertains to the whole situation with where we are today and the conversation about American textbooks. I wanted to give you that background so you understand where we are coming from and the foundation to which we stand on. When we had a parent in Williamson County, Tennessee, which is the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, as many of you probably know that. But Williamson County also is one of the top 10 wealthiest conservative Republican districts or communities in the country. So one would think that we can trust that our children are being properly educated in the classrooms, in those schools. Well, we had a parent who contacted me. She's been a member, one of our watchmen for a long, long time. She contacted me and she said, "You'll never believe what we found in one of our textbooks here in Williamson County." And so she brought the textbook over. She brought some instructional materials that were being used to teach her son. He was in 9th grade at the time, public school in Williamson County. She brought the textbook, and in the textbook, this was a human geography AP textbook. So this is being taught to the cream of the crop of the students in Williamson County. Basically, it was a quote that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies and army actions. Well, this was completely unacceptable. I knew that if the citizens of Williamson County knew that this propaganda was being taught to their children, these are families that are evangelical Christians. I mean, you can find a church on every corner in Williamson County, in Franklin, Tennessee. So we knew that if parents knew that this was being taught to their children, they would be outraged. So of course I began to do a little bit more research and digging deeper. The instructional materials, there was a source page that was given to the students because they were to do a report. And they had organizations or websites as sources that they cited in this instructional material that were from some were from pro-Palestinian terrorist groups. And this was being given to our children in an American school, in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, to research for reporting. There was no source cited of a legitimate Israeli, Jewish, conservative site for our children to access. And so when I started to see that, then I started to dig deeper. Not only did we find the anti-Israel and anti-Semitic content, but we found anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, pro-Islamic content that was unconstitutional because they were teaching our children about converting to Islam. That is in violation of our state and US constitutions. But nobody knew that this was being taught to our children. And we wonder why. You know, we've always said that, you know, the professors on the universities, higher ed, are indoctrinating our children. But nobody had any idea that this was going on in our secondary schools. So we launched a campaign to let the citizens know of that county. And that campaign consisted of media. We purchased radio time, 30-second and 60-second spots. We produced them. We gave the parents the examples of what we had found, quote by quote. And we mobilized our area, our school district. There was a school board meeting that was coming up where they were going to vote to remove this textbook or keep it. And we had been so effective in mobilizing our local community, just the people that I could reach, the low-hanging fruit, that we were able to put pressure on the school board to review the textbook to determine, do we keep this book or do we get rid of it? Well, they read it cover to cover, and we were focused on the anti-Semitic part. But as they were reading, they saw all the other anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian content, that all the propaganda that was being taught, what was said, pro-China content that was being taught to our children. So these school board members read all of that just like I did. And when it came to vote, we called for parents and citizens, taxpaying citizens too, because taxpayers fund this garbage and they have a say in what they should do. As Americans, we were raised, at least the baby boomers were raised and taught that every generation, we have to hand this constitutional republic to every generation. And the way that we do that is through education. We properly educate that next generation. So when we hand them the Constitution and we give them the responsibility that they have now to carry and to protect and safeguard this Constitution of the United States of America, we have that responsibility so that they will be able to take it and they will be able to take it to the next generation as well. But we have failed to do that effectively. We've turned our children over to a system that has taken our children away from the very foundational values that our founders envisioned when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, when they drafted all of those founding documents. And therein lies the problem that we are facing today. But we launched this media campaign. We were able to fill that school board meeting room, standing room only. Parents came, lined up, taxpaying citizens came, lined up to share, to tell the school board at that time, remove this textbook. And of course, there was no response from the school board because they don't engage with the audience. You just get up and speak for your 2 or 3 minutes, whatever they allot you, and you make your case, and then you sit down. But when I got up, I told them, I laid out the evidence that I could within the 3-minute framework that I had. And I said to them at the end, if you do not remove this textbook from our children's classrooms, we will remove you from office. That was in 2014, April. of 2014, that school board meeting. We had 4 months. Well, they voted that night to keep that textbook against the majority of the citizens that were standing there that night telling them no. There might have been 1 or 2 people who said, we don't have a problem with the textbook. They got up and spoke publicly. The majority, 98, 99% of the people said, get rid of it. So they voted that night to keep the textbook, and we worked to mobilize the citizens to work to remove the school board members that were up for re-election that year. And come August, which was the election day, there were 6 school board members who were up for re-election, and we removed all 6 of them in one election cycle. That is the power and the influence of we the people when we decide to engage with our local governing bodies. In particular, in this situation, the school board. We've heard the term, all politics is local. And ladies and gentlemen, it absolutely is. But we the people have to decide. Our government was never intended for us to vote for people to go off and do what they want to do once they're elected. We the people determine what those leaders are supposed to do. They serve at our pleasure. We do not serve at theirs. And it's time for Americans, especially the baby boomers, because this is how we were raised. It's time for us to take back local control of our communities. And we must start with the bottom, the foundation, which is education, because our children are the future of these United States. And if we stand back and allow, look at what's, like I said, when I opened, look at what's happening in the streets of our cities. Our young people have bought into this disinformation, this Marxist disinformation campaign. And make no mistake, this is a communist Marxist takeover of the United States of America. And you can easily, we won't have time to go into it right now, but all you have to do is just Google after this interview, the naked communist, the 45 goals of taking over America. You will be shocked at how many are already implemented. And if we don't, freedom-loving Americans do not take back our country, then the future of the United States and the Western free world is over. Because I am getting people from all over the world, because we do have an international organization and influence. I am getting emails from people all over the world who are praying for us in this situation that we're in right now because of this. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. This doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what political party you affiliate with. This is an American constitutional crisis situation. And if we cannot go to the voting booth in integrity and make sure that our votes are counted properly without some system coming in to throw votes to another candidate, we are in trouble. And this is what our children, they've been waiting for this day to happen because our kids have already been indoctrinated with this. I hear from so many parents who tell me, I don't even know my kids. We used to say that about our college students when they came home from university. Our kids were like, where's my son or my daughter? You know, where's the kid that I sent off to college 4 years ago? Well, now it's happening in the lower grades. And that's why we decided to get engaged in this battle, because we saw ultimately where this would lead. And fortunately, there are states like the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis, when he was then congressman, we went to him and we showed him the evidence of what we found in Tennessee schools. Now, here's what happened, and this is how this issue went. We found out the issue was not just Tennessee, that it was a nationwide problem. When we started putting out these media alerts and press releases, and we were publishing op-eds in newspapers, not just local, but national, Fox News picked up the story. And they ran with that story about what we were teaching our kids in that textbook, that anti-Semitic quote. They ran that story for about 2 weeks, focused on Williamson County, focused on the school board, focused on the superintendent of the schools. We started hearing from parents and citizens who were bringing their kids or their grandkids' textbooks home, making the kids bring them home and reviewing them, the history, the geography, the social studies, the civics textbooks. They were finding the same content that we were finding in Williamson County. And that's when I knew, oh my gosh, I thought it was just a takeover of the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, that they were targeting this because they knew that if we can take down a religious or a state with a large Christian evangelical population, we can take any state down. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was across the board. And the one state that we heard the most from was the state of Florida. So Tennessee, Florida, and Ohio are the 3 states that we had the greatest impact in and influence in because of the number of people who engaged with us in the early days when we were exposing this content. And as we were exposing it, they were showing us, they were sending us examples, screenshots of what they were finding in their children's textbooks. And so Glenda, I think that's when Glenda came on board, when we really started to launch. So we've been involved in 30 counties across the state of Florida. But like I said, I went to then Congressman DeSantis, showed him the content of the textbooks. And he said to me then, when he saw the egregious content, he said, I am running for governor in Florida, and if I win, we're getting rid of Common Core and we're getting rid of these textbooks. Well, he got rid of Common Core, and now he's in the process of getting rid of the textbooks. We just were involved in reviewing and drafting, helping to draft the standards for civics and for Holocaust in the state of Florida. We are now, as part of our nationwide campaign, we are going to take those civics standards and the Holocaust standards, and we're going to take them to other states like Tennessee and Ohio and the other states where we have chapters that are actively engaged in this battle on the local level and throughout their state as well. So it's critically important that we work with our state legislature, we show them the evidence, and the reason why we are asking the state legislature to review, we're calling for an emergency review of civic standards in our state legislatures because of the chaos that we have seen erupt with our young people, with the destruction of our communities, people being murdered in the streets, people being attacked in the streets, buildings being defaced and destroyed, anti-Semitic pogroms being launched in our communities, like in Los Angeles back in June, and local officials in a lot of these communities stand by and allow monuments to be defaced and destroyed and torn down. Those monuments are important markers, and it says in the Bible that we are not to remove our ancient boundary stones. There are reasons why we have those markers in our society and in our culture. They are historical markers for us to remember who we were and who we are today. And sometimes those markers talk about a dark time, like slavery in the United States of America. But they are also markers to remind us, again, who we were and who we are today. We defeated slavery in the United States of America. We never hear that story. But now we have propaganda, not only through these textbooks like Pearson Publishers, but we also have propaganda like the 1619 Project that has no historical basis. We have the Black Lives Matter curriculum being pushed into our schools. Black Lives Matter is an anti-Semitic Marxist organization. The 3 founders, women, are admitted avowed Marxists. And we have legitimate organizations and legitimate leaders who are signing up to support this movement. This is frightening, ladies and gentlemen. Either these people are ignorant, and many of these people are baby boomers. They were taught and educated just like you and I were in our public school system. We know about our constitutional republic. We know that we should be fighting for it and defending it. And we shouldn't be ashamed. But these people are buying into this false narrative. This information has no foundation or accuracy in history. But we say we have a systemic racial problem. We do not have a systemic racial problem. We overcame slavery. Do we have pockets of people who are racist? Yes. Doesn't matter what part of the spectrum. You could be white, you could be black, you could be Asian, you could be Indian. There are all types of views, but it is not a systemic problem, as we have been convinced in the media. And it's time that we push back and we prove that. But getting back to the curriculum and what we're doing in the state of Florida, we found when we were doing the research on the curriculum and the textbooks being used, it's being used by Pearson Publishers. Pearson Publishers, let me just tell our audience this, because if this doesn't get you upset, I don't know what will, because this really made me angry. Pearson is not a US-based textbook publishing company. They are British-based. Their shareholders, their largest shareholders, are the Islamist governments, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Libya. These are the shareholders who control and determine the content of what we are going to teach our children. That should make all of us extremely nervous, ladies and gentlemen. Why don't we have these American textbooks, American published textbooks? Why? Because Pearson now owns the corner on the education market. Pearson has bought up 80% of the textbook publishing companies in the United States of America. But you won't see Pearson publishers on the textbook. You will see the names of the different textbook publishing companies that they bought up. They're not changing the name of the publishing company. Why would they not do that? Why wouldn't they make that a Pearson brand? Because, ladies and gentlemen, Pearson doesn't want us to know that they have a monopoly on our children's minds through their education.
Laurie, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
The president has been pushing a complete parental controlled school choice, and I'm wondering how you feel about that and what role you think this would play. I personally think the quality of our education would skyrocket and the cost would immediately drop like a rock. So I would like to hear your views on that at some point in this conversation, if you could.
Yeah, I really have not, Glenda, taken a position on school choice. I believe that children should be educated in the schools in their community. And if that's school choice, then so be it. I believe that because our children are not being informed, and if we have school choice, my concern is that not all schools are going to be educating our children the same way. I believe there needs to be a complete overhaul of our education system. We need to go back to the foundation of how we used to teach our children, the way you and I were raised. All of us were raised, those of us who are baby boomers. We were properly educated. I graduated from Florida schools, Broward County. And Broward County is a very liberal county, but I graduated from Broward County schools. I went to Palm Beach County schools in middle school and in elementary schools. And I was taught to be a great American, to be a patriot, to be a lover. And look at the work that I'm doing. This is the outgrowth of my education, of the foundation that was laid. And many of those of you on the call and those who are involved in this battle have also been educated that way. We have to go back. Every school should be educated accurately. I do not believe in the federal government overhauling education. The federal government should not even have any involvement or any say. Back in the day before President Carter, there was no Department of Education on the federal level. Education was determined by the states, and the states competed with each other to have the best education system because they knew that parents would move their children, just like we move our families to counties where we know we have the best school district in our states, because we want to give our children that education. So schools competed with each other state by state, just like they compete with each other county by county. I believe that there has to be, that we've got to hold our elected officials, our governors, our departments of education in our state legislatures accountable for the education or the lack thereof of what our children are being given. And I use Florida as the model because Governor DeSantis said he was going to do it, and he did. And now he's in the process of changing it. And other states, I'm talking to other state legislators who say, when Florida adopts this, bring me the language, because why reinvent the wheel? Let's adopt it in Tennessee, let's adopt it in Texas, let's adopt it in Ohio and across the country. But again, it's going to take we the people who live within those counties, who live within those states, to be that voice. And that's what PJTN is here for. We're here to help equip you on the local level to take back local control of education. You start at the bottom, and we work our way up to the state legislature. We've got to get rid of the Department of Education on the federal level. It is the Department of Education who has got us into this situation. Common Core came in because Bill and Melinda Gates, Bill Gates introduced Common Core at the G8 Summit in 2006 in Moscow. We saw the fallout of Bill Gates' Common Core. He didn't call it Common Core. He presented the idea, the concept of Common Core. Well, it was 6 years later that we found the evidence of that concept in Tennessee schools. It only took 6 years, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to take a long time now to undo the damage that has been done, but it requires patriots, people who love America, to be willing to fight for this country. I do believe that Almighty God, just as he was with the prophets in the Bible, in the Old Testament, just as he was with the prophets back then, I believe he was with the framers of the Constitution when they were drafting our Constitution. And I believe that they were preparing for this day. And there's evidence of that, and that's for another show. But I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the only way we're going to be able to take back our country is if we, the people, start engaging in our community. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We get the people to get boots on the ground, start reviewing the textbooks, look at the instructional materials, demand accountability from our local school boards and our local schools, and then work our way up through the state legislature. When we find the problems, then we address the problems within the legislature, and we demand accountability by all of our elected officials. Because again, remember, the chaos that we have witnessed happened because of the leadership on the local level. When police officers were told to stand down and allow people, our young people, to desecrate, demolish, murder, and attack citizens on the streets of our cities, those were mayors, those were governors that told law enforcement to stand down. Those people must be removed from office. So that's where we're working, again, to educate and to activate, because we, the people, are going to be responsible for what we leave for our children. And ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to leave a Marxist, socialist nation to our children and our grandchildren, we wasted or we allowed to die on foreign soil the men who were willing to fight, and women, to fight and defend our freedoms. How embarrassing as Americans that we turn our back on the very people who shed their blood only to say, I'm too busy, I don't have the time to get involved, and we're going to allow our country to fall under Marxism. And the future for our children and our grandchildren will be slavery. And if that's what we can lay our heads down on our pillow at night and go to bed and be at peace with that, shame on us as Americans. We're going to fight. And we need others to join the ranks and to fight alongside us in your own community, within your own state. So, having said that, Corey,
You said what?
Having said all of that, I'd be open to taking any questions, comments, to hear from you. Because again, I want to remind everybody, we are on social media. You can find us, and if you go to our website, you'll be able to join. But the only way you're going to stay informed about the facts and what's really going on is through our website, pjtn.org. You've got to sign up and get on the mailing list, because we're already being silenced because our message doesn't resonate with some of the powers that be.
Orange logging.
Laurie, I would like to know if there are other states that you're working with outside of Florida already.
Yes, the states that we are working with, of course, are Tennessee, Ohio, Texas, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and just now, we just brought California on board. These are people, these are citizens just like you and I, who live in those states, who understand the threat, and they are getting engaged. And so we're trying to grow our numbers county by county, state by state.
There's a lady actually in Tennessee that I know. Her name is Deborah Hyde, and I've known her for a long time. Anyways, she won a decision in her favor with the Supreme Court, and it was for her needs of her child, special needs child with Down syndrome. I think she'd be excellent to be a front runner, because she has the experience of the education system, but also she's been successful. So I'd like to put you in contact with her somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on one second, Corey. The sun's coming out, so I didn't notice that it's kind of adjusting the.
Maybe, is that the storm coming in?
Actually,
What is her name? What's her name again?
here we go. The sun is coming out.
Her name is Deborah Hyde. DeborahHyde. Deborah Hyde.
Okay. Super. All right. Anyone else? Any comments, thoughts, feedback? I mean, surely I'm sure that some of you are probably shocked by the information that I've shared, and some of you are not surprised.
I have a question.
Hi, Kelly.
Good morning. Good morning. I apologize for missing the beginning of your talk. I had the wrong Zoom link, so please forgive. One of the things that I'd like to just have a better understanding of how to take action. I live in Rutherford County, Tennessee, and all 4 of my grandchildren are in public schools that are very, very close to the poverty line. The majority of the students either are considered in poverty or they are considered ESL types of students. And one of the things that I have struggled with is, what is something that I could do that could have an impact when the bottom line is these 4 grandchildren of mine will continue a public school education.
Right.
And that's just the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, Kelly, you're in an interesting county, because Rutherford County also experienced the same type of propaganda and curriculum about the same time that Williamson County was finding the textbooks. So was Rutherford County. I'm working with a school board member, and that's who I would recommend that you reach out to, Lisa Moore. And no relation, but our hearts are knit together on this. But she has been one of the leading school board members in Rutherford County that has been challenging the system. And so I would start with her and build that relationship with her. And because we are working with her, I had a couple of parents from Rutherford County because of the whole COVID crisis, and this is something you all should know because this is frightening. Because of the whole COVID crisis and our kids in their virtual classrooms, Rutherford County, along with Montgomery County, we're waiting for other counties and parents in other counties to confirm if they received an agreement, but an agreement was sent home with the students that the parents, while or it was emailed to them, that while their child is in a virtual classroom in the privacy of their home, they have to sign an agreement that they will not, the parent will not eavesdrop on their child's virtual classroom. What? Eavesdrop? And they say it's for protection, it's for privacy issues. No, this is called public education. What is it that our children are talking about in the context of reading, writing, arithmetic, history, that has to be so private? It's because they, like the teacher in Pennsylvania, I don't know if you all heard this, but a couple months ago, a teacher in Pennsylvania was put a tweet out. He was lamenting about how he was concerned that some of the conservative parents were going to be watching on virtual classrooms and see him indoctrinating their children. This is a teacher in Pennsylvania. He's not the only one, ladies and gentlemen. So they are trying to keep this information, to suppress the information. So they want parents to sign off. Well, two parents, when they read that agreement, they sent it to me and said, look at what we're being asked to sign. And I sent a message back to them. Absolutely not. It is unconstitutional. They have no right, because in that agreement, you know what it says? If the parent signs the agreement and does not keep the agreement, the state can come in and remove the child from the virtual classroom. Well, what does that mean? Because they didn't say what that would look like if they violated it. Does it mean that they will come and they will remove our child from his virtual classroom in our home? Does it mean that they'll block him from being able to access digitally the assignments? They don't say. But Montgomery County, which is the Clarksville area where our military lies, they also, parents in that, and it was middle school. And here's the other clincher. You know, you talked about your children being in lower end school districts. Well, this was a rural school district that we got these two agreements, virtual agreements from by parents who made us aware. So what is it about the middle schools? Why is it the rural, Montgomery County isn't rural, but why these two? And we're still waiting to see. So if anybody on this call, if you have children or grandchildren in the system, ask your sons or daughters, or ask your children, have they received any type of document? They would have sent it. It should have been emailed and sent to the parents to sign, to agree to. Unfortunately, many parents will agree to do that, not thinking a thing about it. There was a young man in Baltimore, Maryland, and I can't remember the other state, but they both were in their virtual classroom, and the teachers were spying on them in their virtual classroom. And both of the boys, one an African American, one Caucasian, they had BB guns on a rack behind them in their bedroom. That was their virtual classroom. And the teachers called the police to report on them. One of the boys was in training to become an Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts. This was a teacher who was investigating, but they're telling us we can't sit in. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's because they want to indoctrinate our children and teach them things that we would be appalled if we knew. There is nothing private about public education, or there shouldn't be. So what are they discussing with our kids that has to be kept silent? There used to be a day back when I was raising my kids, and even back when I was growing up, where parents could sit in and audit a class. Do you remember those days? You could sit in and listen. You'd sit in the back of the class, but parents used to do that. Not anymore. Thank you, Kelly. So I would recommend you start with Lisa and let us know what you find, because we are keeping a database on all the information across the state of Tennessee. We are working with our state legislators. There is going to be some legislation coming up. We are going to expose what's going on, and we are not going to adopt curriculum that is not historically accurate, that is unbiased, and does not reflect the values. In fact, we already passed the law back in 2015, I believe it was, that all textbooks adopted in the state of Tennessee must be historically accurate, unbiased, and reflect the values of the community. And if they don't, they have to be removed. And any teacher, and unfortunately we have to change the law on this because the penalty falls on the teacher. She gets penalized for teaching children in the classrooms of Tennessee with inaccurate, biased curriculum. That law, it should be the publishing companies who should be reprimanded. They are the ones. We should get a complete full refund. We should be able to send that textbook back to the publisher and demand a refund. And also they need to be charged by law. They need to be charged with violating the law of Tennessee. There has to be some type of ramifications to these textbook publishers. That way the responsibility, because I will tell you that with that one anti-Semitic quote in that textbook, we launched such a nationwide massive campaign to expose it that Pearson Publishers, they agreed to retract the textbook, to revise, put out a revision, the 11th edition, removing that quote. Well, guess what? We looked at the next textbook that was supposedly revised. They had the same quote in the textbook on a different page. And when they had hearings in the state legislature, in the Senate, and in the House, we exposed all of this. And of course, that's why the legislature passed that law requiring textbooks to be historically accurate, unbiased, and reflect the values of the community. But that, again, it all falls back into who are the watchmen, who are paying attention, who's looking at the textbooks being used, who's looking at the instructional materials being used in the classrooms. It has to be we the people. It has to be the parents who are engaged. And I know it's a lot of work and it can be overwhelming, but instead of picking up and reading a good book, read your child's geography book or history book, social studies, civics book. We all remember, they're teaching our children today that the highest law of the land is international law. That's not accurate. It's the highest law of our land is the Constitution. It's not some foreign government. It's not the United Nations Charter. It's the Constitution. That is the supreme law of the land. Okay, I've gone on again.
I think everything you're saying, I completely respect and hear you. The piece that concerns me is the same piece that's concerned me for a long time is I think there are a lot of parents out there just flat out trying to survive. And quite frankly, there are a lot of parents that are not engaged. I'm in my 50s. I don't think my mother looked at one of my textbooks ever because it was my responsibility to handle my schoolwork. When I look out there now, I'll be honest with you, and then I'll shut my mouth and behave. What I'm continuing to see is this continuing gap between the haves and the have-nots. And it is not an intentional thing that these parents are doing. They are just not very educated themselves, and they are just flat out trying to survive. And then you've got intelligent Williamson County people who understand what's going on. They can articulate that. And I will tell you, Laurie, one of my biggest concerns is what my late father said, is that my grandchildren, they're my step-grandchildren, are going to be living in a third world country. Right. And it concerns me because I'm sitting here thinking, we're looking at even bigger and bigger things, and I'm just continuing to see this gap. My grandchildren couldn't tell you their address. They can't write a letter. They wouldn't know how to put these are things that I'm quite concerned. And again, I'll be happy to reach out to that school board member, but there's more here. And the people that I go to church with that are teachers, they are flat out ready to get out. They're miserable. And they're hurting because their conscience says stay, and yet they're cooked.
I hear exactly. Go ahead. Sorry, Corey.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you at all. I was just going to say that I want to throw something out there that happened just yesterday. And I don't want to talk about my business, but I want to mention this. I was talking to one of my students who technically was homeschooled for the most part of his life. He's 18. Finally seeing him again after a couple of years. Yesterday, I told him that everything's going to be fine. And I said, less government in your life is good, not more government. And then he says, no, more government's good. And I knew right then.
I know. I homeschooled my children, and I tell parents all the time, get your kids out of the public school system until we can reverse the course. And I know a lot of parents can't do that. And that's why, again, we have to engage in the public school system. And those of us, Kelly, like us, who are informed, we have to be that voice for those who are not informed. And this has all been by design. Again, read The Naked Communists. When you read that, you will say, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to come back from this? By the grace of Almighty God, we will. But it requires us to get engaged. And Kelly, I so appreciate where you're coming from, because you're right. Our government has forced 2 parents to have to work to survive. We have enabled single family homes and parenting because one parent is not engaged. It has completely brought the collapse of our society. That's why we who get it, who understand, we need to stand with and help our local communities, help our educators, help our parents see what's going on. I have a lot of teachers, like what you said, Kelly, who are complaining and they just want to get out of the system. They're staying in it because they need to get their pension, because they've got a couple more years. I hear this all the time by the teachers who've been teaching for 20 plus years. One of the things that we're going to be doing state by state, because our solution is it's the long tail. It's going to take years to reverse the course, but we have to start somewhere. And we started. And just what we've done when we started this battle back in 2012, again, we've been at this for almost a decade. When we started this battle, look at how far we've come. We've changed the laws in Tennessee. We changed education in Texas. We've changed the laws and the education in Florida. We've come a long way, and it's a long road, but we have to re-educate. And one of the things I tell our audience also to do is educate yourself. Take this time to go back and go read the Constitution. There's a Constitution 101 program that Hillsdale College, I tell our followers, go to Hillsdale College and take the course Constitution 101. It's free. Get a refresher course, or be reoriented to think about the Constitution, because the Constitution, we're going to watch, or we're going to watch the Constitution play out over the next few weeks and months as we go into January. The Constitution, if the Constitution does not survive this situation, then we are in trouble. And the only way the Constitution survives is because of we the people. We have to demand accountability in the whole electoral process. We have to demand accountability in our education system, because if we, by design, do not have an educated electorate, we will fall for any whim that comes down the pike that looks good, got the shiny gold object, looks good, sounds good, but is it practical? Just like what you said, Corey, more government. No, less government. And unfortunately, that's not what has been taught to our children, because we've taught our children to be lazy. We all know the fear that we had When we were graduating from high school, we knew that it was the end of an era in our lives. Some of us were going off to college. Some of us were not. We were pursuing technical or whatever careers we were pursuing. But the fear always remained, will I make it? Will I be able to survive? Will I be able to provide for my family? We all remember those feelings. Think back. Graduation day, the reality. And look at where we are today. By the grace of Almighty God, we would not be here if it were not for our faith and for the foundation, the Judeo-Christian foundation our nation was founded upon. And we should not be ashamed. We are teaching our children to be ashamed. We should not be ashamed because it is those values that ultimately fought and won against slavery. And that's the key issue that you hear. And they are pummeling our children and their minds with in their classrooms. We're an evil country because we embrace slavery. No, I'm sorry. It's the other way around. We got rid of it. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to I could talk about this for a long time. Marcia and I are in business together and known each other for a long time. She knows I have automatic soapboxes that pop out under my shoes when it comes to this subject because I was literally born and raised in the education system in academia. I watched this go on. This has been going on way back, at least into the 60s that I know of.
Yeah.
And you almost have to begrudgingly tip your hat to the people who've been wanting to do this to this country because they've had the patience to just slowly work it through. It's not just our kids that are learning this, it's their teachers have learned this and they believe it because their teachers learned it and they believed it. And you just keep adding a brick to this thing and it becomes this wall we have to deal with now. And, you know, I can say a lot of things. What I'm trying to get down to is the crux of a question here that we can address is the books that you're talking about and the education direction that they go in. How do we get around that? I mean, why don't we publish our own books? I mean, the way I found being an engineer to fix something isn't just sit there and bash the other one. It's just to come up with something better. And that way people just switch over to something that's better because that's their nature. That's what I hope with people. It's like cars. We drive cars because we got tired of, they were better than horses. You know, it's not that we just went out and the car people inventing cars and didn't go out and kill all the horses. They just simply make it better where it came to a point.
Well, I agree with them completely, but I do want to ask a follow-up question because as you were talking, I realized I don't have any idea of the process of how the information gets into the textbooks. What is that process? Who's in charge of that?
The textbook publishers. And the textbook publishers, the curriculum that has been adopted is typically what happens is the publishers hire professors at universities to edit these textbooks.
Well, there you go.
So that tells you exactly where we are. When it comes to being in a capitalist country and having an option to purchase, so school boards or school districts or state legislatures can look at a broad expanse of curriculum textbooks that are published out there. The problem is that Pearson Publishers has bought up 80% of the textbooks. They made sure that those textbooks communicate what their shareholders, the Islamist countries, want them to peddle to our children. So that means if 80% of the textbooks being used in the United States are Pearson owned, 80% of our children have been using this curriculum. The teachers have been teaching it to them in our country. Are we surprised that we have found ourselves in this situation? Again, the only way we can combat this is at the local level. All politics is local. And just like we told school board in Williamson County, Tennessee, you don't get rid of this textbook, we are going to get rid of you. We are going to remove you from office. And then we have to work on the local level to educate our neighbors, our family members about the crisis that is going on in our community because of our schools, and we have to take back. And that means attending those school board meetings, meeting with your school board members, asking them, what do you think about this? Where do you stand on this? If any of them say, oh no, that's not true, we don't have a problem with Pearson publishers, and we don't have a problem with education in our community, we've got blah, blah, blah numbers. No, don't listen to them. Look at the books. Ask if you can review the textbooks in your local school, in your local neighborhood. And when you find the evidence, you go back to the principal, you go back to the teacher, you go back to the school board member and say, why are we teaching this to our children in our schools? You know what they'll say to you? Just like the teacher said to me when the parent and I went to go meet with the teacher who was teaching this propaganda. She looked at me like there was something wrong with me. She was a young girl, probably 24, 26 years of age, fresh out of college, and that's what they're hiring in these public school districts, these young graduates from these education universities, because they're cheaper than having a tenured teacher or a teacher who's been teaching for 20 plus years. It's easier for them. They bring these teachers in, and then when a parent comes and questions the content, they look at you like, what are you talking about? Or you're old fashioned. We don't teach that way anymore. Just like phonics, we don't teach phonics anymore. That is the only tried and true way of educating our children and being able to help them read English. If we don't teach our children phonics and we use this whole language, it's not a surprise that our children can't read. And it's true. If you look at the numbers across the country, our children are not able to read because we've used whole language. We've used Common Core. We're not teaching them phonics. And that's something that parents can do with their children. Even if your child is in a higher grade, get a good curriculum. You can order it online to teach your children phonics. When I was homeschooling my kids, I used Abeka. Phonics is the best way to teach our kids how to read. And they need to be writing in cursive. This is another thing that they removed, longhand, from elementary school. If you cannot write longhand, you cannot read longhand. And our founding documents were written in longhand. Our children, if we were to tell our children in the classroom today, we want you to read the Declaration of Independence in longhand, they would look at us like, what are you talking about? I can't read that. They don't know what it looks like. This is all by design, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's all been intentional. And again, we are the ones who have to look for it, go dig for it, and then we have to educate and inform our community. Then we need to go to the elected officials and say, how the heck did this stuff get in? And if they come up with their sorry excuses, we need to say, you know what? Such and such a day is election day for school board, and we are going to remove you because you're uneducated. So, and then we have to look for the people within the community. We the people. Our government was never intended to keep voting in career politicians. Our government was always set up for we the people to govern ourselves, to run for office, local, federal, state, whatever it is. It was never intended to be turned over to a bunch of career politicians. This is where corruption comes in.
I've known about a lot what you're talking about for quite a while. When they started taking cursive out, I actually went and bought a book to teach people how to write cursive because I knew that was actually a problem. And one of my questions is this. I mean, we all know that it's been happening since the 60s. Even If I Were the Devil, Paul Harvey talked about.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Right. So those are all important things to think about. But when did journalism die? I'm trying to figure out that time frame because what I have right. Let me unmute myself. What I have right here, I've been collecting, is called Articles of Interest, okay? And this has to do with child psychology. And I want to share some of these titles of articles in here because you won't find these titles anywhere near. No one's going to produce this, okay? So this is Your Brain on Violence, 2006, okay? What's Wrong with Princesses Today? Okay. Too Many Babies Are Teeny Couch Potatoes. Or let's go with another one. girl 12, one of these in here is, break your kid's whining habit. Okay, these are helpful things, educational things. This is the one of my favorite ones. Are we raising a nation of little egomaniacs?
Yeah.
And this was written in 2007. So all these things are relative, and give kids more free playtime, docs urge, 2006. So I've been collecting these. Last one I'll show you is 10 is the new 15 as kids grow up faster. So it's like, back then they knew what we're in for. And I knew that those articles, and I've saved a lot over the past decade, 2 decades, I know that's what they've been trying to do. So, everyone keeps pushing college, and now I have all this college debt. And then you also got trade. People have trades. My dad was an electrician for IBEW. He made over $100,000 in the 80s. And all these kids are indoctrinated. I'm going to go to college, or whatever. And it's just hampering down on what the abilities of what people can do. The other thing I want to say just real quick, and I'll be quiet. Entrepreneurism is probably now at a 35-year low. So that right there tells you something, that there's a reason why we've been suppressed, is because the corporations do not want competition. They don't. And that is why.
Corey, look at your Chamber of Commerce. If you want to see globalization come into your community, watch what's going on at your Chamber of Commerce, because the Chamber of Commerce in your local neighborhood, your county, or your city is already engaged at the United Nations, because there is a global Chamber of Commerce organization at the UN. And it's all about taking over local control of our communities. This is if you aren't familiar with Agenda 2030 or 2021, go back and research it. Go back to the Naked Communists. One of the 45 items is to take over the media.
Mm-hmm.
And they have.
Right.
This is, ladies and gentlemen, this has fallen to our generation. God did not bring this to the generation before us, and he hasn't held it back for future generations. This has fallen to us. And to whom much is given, much is required. And either we are going to stand up and uphold justice and righteousness. We have been called for such a time as this. Every one of us, I don't care where we reside, God has equipped us. For those of us who see the struggle, who see the threat that we are facing, we have all been equipped with something that God wants to use in our little sphere of influence, in our county, in our city. He wants to use that which he has given to us. The fact that all of you are on this call, and I know many more will tune in later, but the fact that you felt led to be part of this call today tells me that God has already pricked your heart about this issue. You know something is afoot. You can't say, my neighbor is going to handle this. Your neighbor isn't on this call this morning. You are. And I am challenging my brethren, Jews and Christians in the faith, to take a stand, to fight for our freedom and fight for our Judeo-Christian values. This country was founded on those values. And when you see the standards, the recommendations that we have made for civic standards in the state of Florida, they are the most, what is the word? I don't want to use the word progressive, but these standards are going to be the game changer across this country, because we're taking our children back to the framers of the Constitution. We have failed to teach our children that because of Common Core, because we allowed Common Core to be adopted. And let me tell you, there are legislators in states across this country that are fighting those of us who are fighting to get rid of Common Core tooth and nail. We've experienced it on a federal level. There are people like Jeb Bush, who has bought hook, line, and sinker into Common Core and tried and threatened our Tennessee legislature a couple years ago when we were working on passing a law to remove Common Core from Tennessee, he came to our state and told our Republican leadership they better not vote in favor of removing Common Core. Who is Jeb Bush? He lives in Florida. That's his terrain. He needs to stay there and not come and tell us what's good for us, or tell our legislators what's good for their constituents.
Absolutely.
It's time that we fight back, ladies and gentlemen.
Could you explain? I've been out of the kid raising business for a while, and I am really not that familiar with Common Core. Could you just give an overview of that?
I couldn't hear you. You're not.
Could you give an overview of Common Core? I'm really not that.
Common Core basically is they've sold it to the citizens and to educators as a new set of standards, high standards. And so I tell people, if you look at the standards, you hear what they say. We're going to create the highest standards. Our kids are going to perform, off the charts. Okay. Well, let's look at what you're going to use to teach our children in order to adopt those standards. Excuse me. And I tell parents, go back and look at the curriculum. We had Governor Lee in Tennessee, who says he's an evangelical. He ran as an evangelical conservative Republican candidate. He told the constituents of Tennessee, because he knows, he's heard from me, Common Core has got to go from Tennessee. And he told the citizens he was going to get rid of Common Core. Then Bill Gates comes to Tennessee in May 31st of 2019. And Bill Gates brings a big check with him because we're looking for a new testing program in Tennessee. And of course, Pearson has the answer. So Pearson comes with its test, and Bill Gates convinces Governor Lee to adopt the Pearson tests. And I contacted the governor's office, the governor. I sent him an email, a long letter explaining why he should not adopt or use those tests published by Pearson. He said, oh no, it's just going to be the test. We're not bringing anything in, because he told Tennesseans, I'm getting rid of Common Core by the end of this summer. That was last summer. Common Core isn't gone, ladies and gentlemen. It was all a scam. And when I wrote to him, I said to him, and this is why Common Core standards are important for us to understand. I said to him, you are going to adopt Pearson testing. Do you think that you are going to use a different set of textbooks? Do you think that you're going to use a different curriculum than Pearson? No, because if we're going to spend millions of dollars to pay for testing for our children, aren't we going to use good curriculum and good textbooks so that our children test well on those tests? They're not going to use a different set of textbooks from some anonymous publisher. They're going to use Pearson published products. He will never get rid of Common Core. And Bill Gates has said publicly he's going to be in Tennessee for the next 7 years. Common Core standards are not a set of standards. It's all propaganda. They say it's all about this. But for any of you who have done math with your children, I put my daughter, after homeschooling through elementary, I put her in a middle school, public school. And she was having to do math one day, and she was having a problem with it. And I said, oh, just do this. You don't have to do all that. She said to me, no, Mom, I have to do it this way. I have to go this long route to get to this answer. And the answer may not be accurate, but I'm going to be graded on the process that I use this process. I said, no, you're not. I said, you do it this way. You turn it in. And if your teacher has a problem, tell her, give her my phone number, tell her to call me. The teacher never called. And the teacher didn't grade my daughter and fail her on not doing it that way. She ultimately had to learn how to do that because that's what they're pushing. That wasn't higher standards. It is standards to confuse the minds of our children. And
Plus,
if any
also,
of
it
you
makes
ever done it.
the parent can't help their kid.
Exactly. It's all by design. It is not about higher standards. It's about dumbing down our children. Since Common Core came in to Tennessee that we know of, through the curriculum and the textbooks, since it's been adopted, our scores are not better in reading, in writing, or arithmetic.
Laurie?
We are still failing our children, and it's happening across the country. It's actually across the globe because we're fighting Common Core and Bill Gates in South Africa. We've got a chapter there in Australia. No, this is, if you're a member of the United Nations, you've adopted this.
Go ahead.
Laurie? How long is your meeting scheduled to go this morning?
Well, I think we've gone over.
Okay. Well,
But
I have to actually go in a few minutes, but I have a question for you before I do. Do you have in mind any recommended curriculums that we could be offering to our school boards as we engage with them, like the Barney curriculum from Hillsdale or that type of thing? Are they cost effective in your estimation and that sort of thing? And I'm going to go back to mute. I've got to leave the meeting at 9:30. So
We all leave the meeting at 9:30, actually. So.
Yeah, so let me just real quick, there is a new history book called The Land of Hope by McClay. And he's actually going to be going on staff at Hillsdale. I would also push to your legislature or to your school boards original source documents. Make them teach the history from original source documents. That's a cheap, inexpensive way. If they can't buy the fancy curriculum, the price point with these textbooks for the textbooks that are better, that are accurate, like McClay's book, the price point per unit is going to be more than the price point per unit for Pearson, because Pearson sells a bulk. McClay only has one book to offer, but it is one of the best books about our American founding and our history. And the most important thing that I want to encourage everyone on this call, as we are leaving this call, your involvement in local education is crucial to winning this battle. And you need to get involved with your legislator, whoever represents you in the state, in the Senate, and in the House. And you need to start informing them about this as well. And Glenda, you're in Florida. Just know that Florida is way ahead of the curve. Governor DeSantis wants to be known as the education governor. Lamar Alexander thought he was in Tennessee years ago. He's not going to be able to hold a candle to Governor DeSantis. I'm very excited about what this governor is doing. He said he was going to do this when he ran, and he's keeping his word. He understands what's at stake here. And it is the Constitution of the United States of America. It is our freedom and the future for our children and our grandchildren.
For anyone watching, they might wonder, okay, what are the steps we can do to take when we find a textbook and that has inappropriate information? So we get the textbook, and then can you line out real quick the steps that we need to do?
You need to read the textbook. And one of the areas when I ask people to get their history textbooks, it could be U.S. history. You want to go back and you want to read about the founding of our country, what information is provided. When you're looking at world history or world geography, you want to look at, and this also you should be looking at in U.S. history, is the Barbary Pirates. What do they say about the Barbary Pirates? Because that was the first international war that the United States engaged in. Also, who were we fighting? The Mohammedans. That's what we were taught, the Islamists. But that's not being taught to our children anymore. But so for U.S. history and civics, Barbary Pirates, the Constitution, what is taught about the Constitution, and then world history, you want to look at the Arab-Israeli conflict. You want to look at the Barbary Pirates, what they say about that as well. Because those key things, if you find information that is not accurate or is biased, we want to hear from you. Those are the key things. And once we will assist you, that's what PJTN is for. We will help hold your hand through the process. Who you need to go talk to, document what they say. But the goal is to get rid of Common Core and get rid of the textbooks that have been adopted. Common Core has been adopted in 47 states across the country. So we have a lot of work to do.
Laurie,
this is Glenn.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, sorry there, Corey. Laurie, thank you so much. And Corey, thank you so much for facilitating today. Barbara and I have been quiet. We've been listening at the condo here in Daytona Beach this morning, but we've made a list of people both in the state of Georgia and Tennessee that we think can help your cause. It looks like that probably one of the closer states would be Georgia that really needs some help. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to you, Corey.
I was about to say the same thing, except for all that you said there, Glenn, was just thanking Laurie for coming on and educating us and letting us know about the powerful movement that you've actually created with your team. Is there any other movement like this going on in the country? Or you guys are it?
Yeah, there are other groups that are addressing this issue, and they provide the resources and the evidence for us. But we, as far as I know, we are the only grassroots mobilization force. We educate, then we activate. And a lot of organizations are providing great detail and great information. And there are people working on the local level that are activating people. I know in Florida, we've got the Florida Citizens Alliance that we are collaborating with. So we are collaborating with other organizations, but on the national scale, what we're doing, no, I am not familiar with any other organization that is fighting this on a national, actually international level now.
So much, I'm honored to be part of just this meeting in itself, because it's like I've been waiting for someone like you to come on, because I didn't know, of course, the process, but it's not it's what you're made to do. This is your mission. And I appreciate you.
I've been waiting on people just like you. So you know what? We both feel a need, an important need. We are Americans. We are patriots. And if others were willing to spill their blood, how can we not do the very least in helping to ensure that what they gave up will be preserved for future generations? It grieves me, and there are times when it brings me to tears when I think about the people. I just watched a film about World War II, Band of Brothers. And I said to my husband as it was coming to a close, I said, look at these men who gave up their lives, were willing to sacrifice and storm the beaches of Normandy. And now we have a country that is so ungrateful for the sacrifice that they made. Some did not come home. Some came home without limbs. And this, and we don't care. It grieves me. It grieves me. That's
Well,
all.
the work you do is very, very full of honor and valor and integrity. And I'm just glad that you came on today. I'm sure everyone else is as well. Does anyone else want to say anything before we sign off?
I'd like to say one thing that it's maybe a ray of hope. I've sort of been involved in teaching history. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I've talked to quite a few people about history. I'll put it that way. And one thing I'm always reminding people who are getting sort of sad about the situation is several years ago, over 25 years ago, back when cable started, you had a company called the Entertainment Channel, or the Discovery Channel. Okay, they started out with one channel and put kinds of stuff on there. Their main thing they were trying to do was put on art stuff and music. And then to fill in, they put history stuff in, because there was a lot of history documentaries they could use to fill it. So that became the most popular thing. And to the point where they ended up making the History Channel and History Channel 2 and all these other things. And that's because people want to know this stuff. And if it's out there, if we can get it to them, they'll want to know. I mean, people always want, you have to play in the fact they want to know more. They want to have more vocabulary had to be able to think another point of view. And that's where we have to work on this. We have to make it a positive thing that, hey, it's good to know more stuff.
Yes.
Opposed to just one way of doing something. Because I've been running into that, a lot of different, even in the manufacturing that we're trying to do.
Thank you for saying that. I want to remind everybody that that's why we produce media, the documentary films. They're all historical. And again, if you have children, grandchildren, go to the website, have a movie night. We used to do it with our kids when they were at home. Have a movie night, sit down and watch our programs. Some of our programs are over an hour long, the documentaries. Some we have 30-minute programs. But watch the programs and then have a conversation. Engage your children and your grandchildren in conversation and get them to articulate and communicate what they believe or what they've been taught about this issue. Because the one thing that media, the advantage that media provides for us today in our generation is that we are a media-driven culture. Most people are not going to read a book on subject matter. They're going to sit down in front of their TV, they're going to watch the program, and they're going to be educated and informed from that. And depending on how that media, that program affects them, will determine if they share that content with other people that they think of that should be watching it. We're being silenced. Our freedom of speech is being robbed from us, which is one of the things to go in a communist country. And so we have to use the tools, access the tools that we have access to spread the information. And like I said, if you're on my mailing list, you're going to stay informed about what's going on because we're going to expose these things and we're going to give you the tools and the information to combat the disinformation going on in your local school district. So you got to sign up to get on the mailing list, pjtn.org. And follow us, like us, share us on your social media pages while we still can, because the time is limited. The hour is short.
We honor and value your time, Laurie. Thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate everything you've done and what you continue to do. And may the Lord bless you through every endeavor that you're going through.
God bless you. Thank you all so much. God bless you all. May God give you wisdom and strategy and favor as you launch this investigation within your own community. Let us know if we can help. PJTN's here to stand with you.
Thank you, Laurie.
God bless you all.
You too.
Thank you.